Hey there and welcome to Stand By for Adventure. My name is John Lighthouser, and we're going to cover something hopefully very quickly today because I don't want this to take too awful long, and I'm going to go through some tips for new GMs, new DMs, new moderators, whatever you want to call it. Things to keep in mind if you want to run games for your friends or family or whoever, and it seems really kind of weird and intimidating, and maybe you feel a little anxiety about it, and that you're not prepared, and that you don't know what you're doing, and you don't need to worry about any of that. Let me just say that up front. You're going to have nerves. The nice thing about D&D and role-playing games in general is when you are playing, you are generally surrounded by your friends, you are comfortable talking to them, you're comfortable being an idiot in front of them, you're comfortable saying stupid things, saying funny things, saying controversial things, so don't worry about it. I have a little list here of things we're going to talk about, and I just need to find it because I don't know where I just put it. That's not it. That's not it. Oh, where did I put it? Oh my goodness, I'm all over the place here. Let's just go over here and find it. I'm sorry about this. Here we go. This is it. I did have the right one. It was just shrunken. The site I'm showing you right now is obviously Amazon's Dungeons & Dragons page, and we're going to get to this. I just wanted this to be on the screen first so that you could see Dungeons & Dragons and what this was about. But I want to go over some online resources that you can find for D&D if that is the game you're interested in. And we'll get into different games. If you go to the Wizards of the Coast website, their biggest moneymaker is Magic the Gathering. So if you're here, you need to just go down a little bit on the page and go to Dungeons & Dragons, and that will take you to their official page, and you can find out about all the various products they have, information on how to play the game. There is a rules introduction here, and there's also a link to, if I can do this correctly, to the basic rules. This is about a 180-page document, I want to say, that is the heart of the rules. So if you don't want to go out and buy three $50 rule books, completely understandable, right off the bat as a new player, you don't have to do that. Download a PDF of these basic rules and read through them, skim through them, whatever you want to do. You're going to want to read them at some point. If you get the chance, the first thing you want to do as a new GM is play a game with other people as a player, not as a GM. That will get you familiar with things. It'll get you sort of to understand how the flow of the game works and the back and forth that goes on between the GM or DM and the players, and the players and the players, and all of that. It will be very, very useful, and you'll also get used to how you roll the dice, what dice you roll, how you add up your numbers, all that sort of stuff. So get a chance to play the game before you run it. Play the game as a player instead of play the game as a GM. Because as GM or DM, you are still playing the game. There's tons of online resources for D&D, and you can just type in D&D and you'll get a ton of various things. But if you want to look for things like the basic rules, type in D&D basic rules. It'll take you right to them. There is also something called the 5e SRD, which is the System Reference Document. This does not matter at all what SRD means. It's just the D&D rules that are sort of in the public domain. That's not accurate at all. It just means anybody can create a website for them with a specific section of the rules that Wizards of the Coast has made available for exactly that reason, to make it easier for people to get into the game, to find out about the game, to read about the game, to learn the rules, to find out, what are the ability scores, what are the backgrounds, what are the races, what are the classes. All that stuff is available for free. You do not have to buy a thing. And it's basically the whole game. You'll just have to make up a whole lot of things that are provided in other books that aren't covered in this public information. Um, so anyway, search online. That's going to be the first place to go. If after you've searched online, you've found some stuff, you know what you want to do, what you really want to do in order to kind of cut back on any sort of feelings of nervousness you have is to start small. So don't start a role-playing game with a table full of 8 people. That's not where you want to start. You want to start with probably a couple of other people at the table. I would say 2 or maybe even 3. My history, I grew up playing just me and my friend, and that was it, the 2 of us. And that went on for years and years and years, and this was back in the 80s, and there were not all that many people playing, or at least not in our area. And it worked fine. We had a blast. It changed how we had to run things. We had a lot more non-player characters involved. And it was fine. So if you only have you and a sibling or you and one friend that you're playing with because the 2 of you are the ones who are most interested, go ahead and do that. You can do it. It's very, very easy. You might have to kind of adjust the difficulty levels of things a little bit because a single character with only 8 hit points is a little fragile. But again, with the right sort of balance and the right sort of care put into how encounters are built, it's absolutely playable. I've played a solo game, is what I'd refer to it as, up to 16th, 18th level, which is a long time. But start small. Start with a small group of people. If you want to play D&D, you're in the right place. I am using D&D as a catch-all for any role-playing game. I'm sure some people would take a lot of issue with that, but it is the 500, 800, 9,000 pound gorilla, whatever you want to say, in the room. It is the category leader, and so it's the game that people think of most often when they think about role-playing games. If you want to play Traveler, great, you can go find Traveler. If you want to play a Star Wars game, you can go find one. If you want to play Game of Thrones, if you want to play Paranoia, if you want to play a superhero game like Mutants and Masterminds, if you want to play or Masks, or you want to play Apocalypse World. I mean, there's almost an unending number of role-playing games you could potentially play. But what you want to do is find a game that you and everyone else at the table is going to be interested in and has bought into. You don't want to play something dark and gritty and nasty and scary if there's people at the table who really would not enjoy that. So Call of Cthulhu may not be everyone's cup of tea. D&D is nice because you can make it a very, it seems weird to say family friendly, but you can make it a very family friendly setting. There doesn't need to be that creepy, scary thing going on. You can always introduce it if you want to, but make sure your players are all on board with it. So start small. Choose a game that everybody's into. If you're using D&D, great. Then you already know. Start simple, and that is different than keeping the group small. What I mean by start simple is you don't have to start a game thinking you have to tell a huge, grandiose story. You can really start with, and this is one of my other things is I have notes here, is be stereotypical. Have everybody meet in a bar, because no one cares how you all get together. You can worry weeks, months, years down the line to have cool and innovative way to introduce players to each other, right? But when you're first starting out, just start simple. Like, they all know somebody, or they all know each other, or they're all sent a letter and are told to gather somewhere, and from there the adventure begins. What you're really doing in the first couple of sessions is getting to know the rules, getting familiar with things, feeling more comfortable with running things, and you can do that best by staying very focused on a simple setup, and then let things go from there. Don't overplan things. That's the next point. And in this case, you are not really writing a book. You're not even writing a story. You're not really writing anything. You're coming up with a set of circumstances that the players will then react to, and then you will react back to them and their actions. So you don't want to have a specific plan of, okay, they're going to go here, and then I know they're going to go here, and then I know they're going to go here, and then I know they're going to go here, because they may not do that. You need to leave a little bit of room for them to be able to explore and figure out what their next steps are, or maybe they want to go rob a house and you hadn't planned on that. There are ways to limit this, and it's a good thing to do also to begin with, because you want to have an overarching plan of what you're going to be doing in the game. You just don't want every single thing planned out, because it will not work out that way. The stereotypical thing, starting in a bar, is fine. I mentioned that earlier. You can also kind of tied into the whole keeping things simple and starting really small is you want to limit the number of choices that the players have, both for your benefit and for theirs. If it's clear that they need to go through the right-hand door, then they will most likely go through the right-hand door, but it's possible they could go through the left-hand door just to be contrary, or to see like, oh, we don't want to leave anything behind, let's go see what's in there. But that's only two choices. You know what's through both of those doors. And that's also why dungeons in Dungeons and Dragons are so good, and why site-based adventures really are so good, is because it automatically limits the choices that you're going to have. If you think of a dungeon or some sort of underground complex, we just call them dungeons. You walk in a door, there's a hallway in front of you, and there are some doors off to either side, or hallways off to either side, and those are literally all the choices the characters get to make. They can move ahead, they can move back, they can go through this door, they can go down this hallway, and that's why dungeons are so much at the heart of D&D, and it's in the name, is because it does that. It limits the number of choices that everybody at the table has to make, has to worry about, has to keep track of, and it also happens to make it really easy for you to run. So think of it like that, and I highly recommend sending your first players into a dungeon specifically for that reason. They only have so many choices. If they're out in the forest, they can literally walk any direction, right? In a dungeon, they can go ahead, they can go to this door, they can go to that door. That's it. You know what's there, and you don't have to be concerned about them suddenly walking through the wall into somewhere they shouldn't be, because they can't do that. That's just not how the game works, unless you have some sort of really powerful magic, but you're not going to have that at first level, or in the early levels at least. Now, despite having said don't overplan, you do want to be prepared. And the things you want to be prepared with are things like, if you're gaming in person, paper and pencils, so people can make notes and keep track of things on character sheets if they have physical character sheets. If they're using something like D&D Beyond, they can use their tablet or their phone to keep track of their character, make dice rolls, keep track of their hit points, all that sort of good stuff. You also want to be prepared with a list of names of people. And they could be anything, and you can find lists online. You can also make out a list of names that you like. You can have characters already predetermined, like, okay, I know they're going to meet the bartender. The bartender is going to be named Ingrid. Ingrid is super nice, but she's very, very tired all the time, and that's the only note you need to know about Ingrid, and you can just sort of portray that to the characters, or to the players, and they will react in kind. Or at least they'll react appropriately. They probably won't also act like Ingrid. have a, like I said, a list of names, a list of names for places, maybe even a list of names for things that they might run into, or animals, or if there's a newspaper in your setting or anything like that. You're going to need a lot of names. You're going to need names for bars, for alchemist shops, for a university in the city, and that's the sort of stuff that usually you would read in whatever setting you're in. But if you're just making stuff up and you haven't invested in a bunch of books yet, just make it up and just make sure to take notes so that you keep track of everything and you know exactly what's going on. And over time, your simple little setting that starts with, 3-4 people gathered in a bar will grow to define a little bit more of that bar, the neighborhood, the city or town, the region that they're in, the sorts of things that are in the area. If there's a haunted castle up on the hill and the characters are hired to go investigate it because some new lord has decided to come in and take it over. Great. There's your whole story. That's the whole thing. It just starts building from there, and you just keep going and keep going. Limit the number of choices. Dungeons are good. Railroading. So this is a term a lot of GMs, a lot of gamers talk about, is where the GM or DM sets up a scenario in front of you, and there's really no choices. That's not a great way to play, because the players don't feel like they get to make any decisions. They have no agency. They just start sort of going from, okay, here's the plot point they wanted us to hit, and the next plot point, and the next plot point, and the next plot point, and the next, and we don't ever make a decision. We don't ever get to do anything or make it feel like we're having an impact on the world other than, oh, we killed some more goblins. Sometimes that's fine, but you don't want to force people to go in a certain direction, because it's uncomfortable for them and it's uncomfortable for you, and you will absolutely, everyone at the table will be able to feel when something is being forced. And it's not fun. If, however, you are at the table and the players do something that you really didn't expect and you really don't know how to handle as a first time or early GM, just tell them and say, listen, everybody, this is a really neat idea. I love that you guys came up with it. I don't know how to handle it. They're not going to care. I mean, they might go, man, that sucks. But it's fine. You're all working together to have a good time, right? They don't want you to make a mistake and kill them all because they did something you weren't expecting and aren't really sure how to handle. And you don't want to do that to them either. So make sure that they understand, like, we're learning this. We're all in this together. We're all learning at the same time. And if you guys do something that I'm really not ready for, please don't make me do that. Because I won't know how to do it well. And your comfort, rather, you will become more comfortable with making things up at the spur of the moment. And believe me, you 100% will get more comfortable with that because it's all you're doing at the gaming table. So don't try to force things. Railroading to some extent is okay because, again, like a dungeon, you want to limit their choices, but not limit so much that there is only one choice, because that's not a choice, right? So they either can choose to play the game exactly the way you want them to, or they cannot play it. That's their only choice, and that's not fun. You want to be able to... You want to give them the opportunity to do what they want to do. And again, if they do something you don't want, just tell them, like, can we not do this? Can we do something else? They are not going to care. I 100% will let you know that. It just, if you have a reasonable group of people, they're not going to care. I mentioned making notes, and the other thing I was going to say is recommended first adventures. If you are new to the game, there are all sorts of adventures out there, and some of them can be quite significantly large. Sorry, I'm just looking down here for one of my books. This is the Ghosts of Saltmarsh adventure. It is 8.5 by 11, and it's got to be 250 pages or something. 256 pages, and it's a high quality paper, so it's very thin, and you don't need that. You don't need a book that size, especially for a first game. What you need is a very thin little book that helps you to figure out how to game and what to do. And there are, in fact, products just like that if you go to the Dungeons and Dragons Amazon page. And first off, what I will say is, if you have the chance, the opportunity to buy any of your products from somewhere other than Amazon, so especially if it's a local game store. I'm in the Seattle area, so we have Mox Boarding House or Card Kingdom. There's Uncle's Games as well, and you can walk into those stores and they will have pretty much anything off the Dungeons and Dragons Amazon page or Wizards of the Coast's website. They're going to have that in stock. And they have starting adventures, and their starting adventures are really, really good. This one in particular is the starter set for D&D. You can find this in Target. You can find this in your favorite local game store. You can find this in, all over the place. It surprises me sometimes where these are stocked. And it's got dice, it has some pre-written characters, it has a 32-page rule book that will take your characters from first level to fifth level, and it has a 64-page adventure. I have run this adventure. It is really fun and really good, and I would absolutely recommend starting with this product. I think it's probably $20 or $30. It's really pretty reasonable. Oh, well, I guess at Amazon it's $11. But it would be about $20. Yeah, $19.99. And like I said, it is an excellent adventure and a great place to start. There are other games that have products like this. There aren't very many that are quite as good. Pathfinder certainly has one, and in fact I think they have one for their Starfinder game too. But a starter set to just get you up and running as quickly as possible. It has just the rules you need. It has a great adventure, dice, which you're all going to need to roll at the table, and it will get you into the game the fastest. They also, especially this adventure, this starter set includes advice for the GM and tells you tips like make up voices or don't worry about making up voices. And that's also one thing I want to touch on too, is don't feel like you need to be like Matt Mercer from Critical Role. In case you are not familiar with that, you should check it out on YouTube. He's been gaming for a long time. I've been gaming for a long time, and our styles have developed over time to allow us, and our ability to handle unexpected things has developed over time so that we can do all sorts of stuff that might make you feel really uncomfortable to do. I don't even think twice about making a weird voice when I'm playing a goblin or a dragon or a vampire. It just happens. And eventually, if that's the sort of thing you want to do, you will also do that. And it's fun. And it also helps the players to get into it a little bit more, because they sort of recognize, like, oh, I'm not talking to John. I'm talking to Strahd, who's a evil vampire, right? In one of the D&D adventures, I should say. The other thing to remember is, especially if you're coming from watching some of the streamers and Critical Role, is you don't need to have 7 million dice and 7 million miniatures and a bunch of Dwarven Forge pieces laid out on a table. You don't need any of that. You can play any role-playing game completely by talking to each other. And certainly over the last couple of years, that's the way I've been doing most of my gaming online, is over Zoom or Discord or something like that. Roll20 is a website that allows you to play online, and it does actually have maps and things like that. But that's a little more complicated than you really need right off the bat if you're new to this. Um, you don't need all that extra stuff. You just need a piece of paper and the ability to describe things to your friends so that they know, okay, Bill's character is next to the ogre, and Lindsay's character is 30 feet away with a crossbow, and she's going to be shooting at the ogre because she doesn't want to get anywhere near it. Like, that's fine. You don't need a map for that, as long as everybody sort of agrees, like, okay, we're going to have to be a little loosey goosey here on like exactly where everyone is. Um, and that said, if you play something like the starter set, it includes maps that you'll have to kind of sketch out on a larger scale if you want to use maps and miniatures and things like that. But it's only an option. It's not required. It's never required. All that other stuff, it's a lot of extra stuff that you don't need to worry about as a new player or a new GM. I think that's pretty much it. Keep it simple. I'll run through these quickly. Find the online resources you want. Start small with just a handful of people. Choose a game that everybody is into, a setting, a genre that everybody is into. Start simple with your story. You don't have to be complex. Don't overplan things. Be prepared with lists of names, pencils, paper, snacks, that sort of thing. The rule books. Make sure everybody has their character sheets. Be stereotypical. Nobody cares. That kind of fits with the keep it simple. Uh, Nobody cares if you're being stereotypical, because they just want to play the game and learn how to play the game, and the fun is not the start. The fun comes during the whole rest of the game, the campaign, however long you run the game. Limit the number of choices that the players have to deal with and that you have to deal with. Dungeons are good for that reason in particular. A little bit of railroading is also okay. You don't want to do it too much. Don't force anything, because it's no fun for anybody. Make sure you're making notes throughout the game and especially after the game, so that you have all the important bits recorded, so that the next time you play you can refer back to them and go, oh yeah, this was the name of the bartender, this was the name of the guy they were hired to rescue from kidnappers, and they found out where they are. Like, you'll have all of that information so that people don't forget. And then finally, just make sure to have a good time and don't feel rushed. The other thing I did want to say is, if you or your players aren't comfortable doing voices, taking on physical characteristics of your character, making unusual movement, like, if you don't want to do any of that stuff, you don't have to. I mean, a lot of people really enjoy the role playing aspect of it, ROLE, but a lot of people also just enjoy the role playing ROLL aspect of it, where they just want to play a fun game where their men get to fight each other on a little board, and it's fun at the end of the night. So don't make somebody talk in character. If they want to say, okay, when I get in front of the king, I don't know what to say, but I'm going to kneel. I want to make sure that I do the right thing. And when I talk to him, I'm going to make sure to say your grace or your honor or whatever the appropriate term is, because the player may not know and likely doesn't know the right way to do things. So you are going to have to be forgiving, just like the players are going to have to be forgiving. So just remember that. Don't force anybody to do anything that they're uncomfortable with, and just try to have a good time. And that's basically it. I'm not going to dive into the rules. That's all stuff you can discover on your own. You can watch people play online. There's so many streams of people playing games. But I think these dozen or so different things that I just named will really hopefully help you to feel more comfortable and to not feel overwhelmed by how much information is out there for D&D, and don't believe any of the stuff that you've heard that, oh, it's so complicated and it's so hard. And no, you're telling a story, and then when something is in question, you roll a die to see if it succeeds or fails. That's it. And then you roll dice to see how much damage you take. I mean, it's surprisingly simple considering how complex people think it is. But there you go. That's about it. If you have questions, do feel free to ask anything in the comments. Like I said, I've been gaming for 40 years as of this year. I've worked in the industry for a long time. I've written for D&D. I've written for a bunch of other game systems as well. I run at least twice a week at this point. Run a game at least twice a week at this point, and probably playing another game once a week. So I know this stuff very, very well, and if I can help you in any way to get more comfortable, or if you have questions about, hey, how would you handle this, how would you handle that, please let me know in the comments. I would love to be able to give you a hand with anything. And also, remember, check online for any sort of resources that you might want or need. There's free adventures you can find. There's like I said, the basic rules. You can use D&D Beyond to create your characters, and here I'll flash over to that. This is D&D Beyond, and it allows you to create a character. You can subscribe to it to be able to get access to more things. There's homebrewed content that's included that people have put in. You can build encounters. So if you have a group of characters, say 3 characters that are second level, you can use the D&D Beyond Encounter Builder to come up with a challenge for them that, in theory, won't overwhelm them and should be something that they can handle. Very, very useful, especially for a new GM. There you go. I hope you like that. Let me know if you have questions, and I'll be back soon. Stand by for adventure. I'm going to do one of these for players, too. So how to be a new D&D player, and that'll be coming up in the next couple of days. Thanks very much. Stand by for adventure.